The night was winding down at the small restaurant, the kind where the lights were dim and the atmosphere relaxed after the evening rush. Clint Eastwood sat alone at a corner booth, nursing the last of his coffee as the staff cleaned up and prepared to close. He had finished his meal earlier, as usual, quietly observing the world around him with the same calm demeanor that had come to define him over the years. The restaurant wasn't busy anymore. The last few patrons had left, and the waitstaff was finishing up their final tasks. It was then that Clint noticed her. The waitress, a young woman in her 20s, had been working tirelessly all night. She moved swiftly between the tables, offering warm smiles to the customers, making sure everyone was taken care of. But now, as the clock ticked toward closing time, she stood near the counter. Her shoulders slumped slightly as she counted the tips from the night's shift. Clint had seen this before, the weariness in the way people carry themselves after a long day of hard work. But it was something in her expression that caught his attention. There was a quiet sadness in her eyes, a hint of something more than just exhaustion. As she took her last few steps to the kitchen to drop off some dishes, Clint overheard a conversation between her and the manager. She was asking for something simple: food to take home. "I don't have enough for groceries this week," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "Could I just take something home? Anything would help." The manager, not out of malice but perhaps out of a lack of awareness, shook his head. "We can't just give away food, you know that," he replied, his voice indifferent. The waitress nodded, offering a small, forced smile, but Clint could see the disappointment on her face. She wasn't asking for much, just a little help to get by. She gathered her things quietly, clearly trying to avoid drawing attention to herself. But Clint had seen enough. Clint finished his coffee, paying his bill as he stood up from the booth. He walked to the door, his mind processing what he had just witnessed. The waitress had been nothing but polite and kind to the customers throughout the night. She had worked tirelessly without complaint, yet the world had passed her by, unaware of the quiet struggle she faced. As he stepped outside, Clint looked around the parking lot. The waitress had already left through the back door, her small figure disappearing into the night. Clint didn't know why, but something inside him told him to follow her. Not in an intrusive way, but in a way that felt necessary, like there was something more he could do. He wasn't one to make a spectacle out of things, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about food. It was about something deeper. He wasn't sure what exactly he expected to find, but there was a sense of urgency building inside him. He casually walked down the street, keeping his distance, just enough so that she wouldn't notice him. Clint had always been a man of action when it mattered, but this time it was different. He didn't know why, but he felt compelled to make sure she was okay. He followed her for several blocks, keeping a careful watch as she walked through the quiet streets, her shoulders still hunched from the weight of her day. She eventually turned onto a side street and walked toward a small, run-down apartment complex. Clint stayed back, watching from a distance as she entered the building. There was nothing remarkable about the building, just another forgotten corner of the city. But as Clint stood there in the shadows, he felt a sense of finality in the moment. This was where her journey had brought her. Clint stood there for a moment, looking at the worn-out apartment building where the waitress had disappeared. He could feel the cold night air seeping into his bones, but it wasn't the chill that held his attention. It was the realization of just how many people lived lives like hers, quiet, unnoticed, struggling in silence. He didn't know much about this young woman, but he could sense her resilience. She had kept a smile on her face, had been polite to everyone, but beneath that surface was a story of hardship, of survival, of untold battles. Clint walked back to his car, a quiet determination forming in his chest. He wasn't going to let the night end like this, not after witnessing her quiet defeat. He didn't believe in grand gestures, but he did believe in taking action when it counted. He needed to do something, anything, to show her that she mattered. The next morning, Clint returned to the restaurant before it opened. He walked through the back entrance where he knew the staff would be preparing for the day. The waitress was there just as he had expected. She was tying her apron, preparing for another shift. Clint approached her, keeping a respectful distance, but his voice was steady. "I know you didn't ask for anything last night," he said quietly, his tone serious but kind. "But I want to make sure you don't go hungry. You've worked hard, and you deserve better than what you've been given." The waitress turned to him in surprise, unsure of what to say. Her eyes flickered between confusion and curiosity, unsure of his intentions. Clint pulled out a small envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to her. "This is for you," he said, his voice unwavering. "Take it. It's not a handout. It's something you've earned." The waitress stood frozen for a moment, her eyes locked on the envelope Clint had handed her. She hadn't expected this. In fact, she hadn't expected anything at all. She had assumed that she would continue struggling, quietly accepting whatever crumbs life threw her way. But here, in front of her, was Clint Eastwood, someone who had no reason to help, yet chose to. His eyes, steady and sincere, never left hers as she hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I don't," she began, her voice shaky, but Clint gently cut her off with a soft smile. "You don't have to explain yourself," he said. "This is just for you. No questions asked." She felt a lump rise in her throat, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. She had worked long hours, faced judgment, and gone without more times than she could count. And now, here was a man who didn't need anything from her, who was simply offering a kindness that she hadn't felt in so long. Slowly, she reached out and took the envelope from him, her hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Clint nodded once, his expression softening. "You're welcome," he said simply. "Now go ahead and take care of yourself." He turned to leave, but the waitress couldn't bring herself to let him go just yet. I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice catching. "You've done more for me than anyone has in a long time." Clint paused, turning back to her with a gentle smile. "Just remember, kindness is never wasted," he said, "and when you get the chance, pay it forward." With that, Clint walked out of the restaurant, leaving the young woman standing there, the envelope in her hand, overwhelmed by the unexpected generosity of a stranger who saw her. The next few days were a blur for the waitress, whose name was Lily. The envelope Clint had given her weighed heavily in her hands, both literally and figuratively. She didn't know what to do with it at first. It wasn't just money. It was a gesture of kindness that had caught her completely off guard. But something inside her had shifted. She had spent so many years going unnoticed, her struggles invisible to the world around her. Yet in that one small act, Clint Eastwood had shown her that she wasn't invisible, that she mattered. It wasn't the amount of money in the envelope that mattered. It was the fact that someone had seen her, truly seen her, and had chosen to do something good without asking for anything in return. Lily didn't spend the money right away. Instead, she tucked the envelope into her purse and thought about it, allowing herself to believe for the first time in a long while that things could be different. The next morning, she woke up early, determined to make a change. She used the money Clint had given her to buy herself a proper meal for the first time in weeks. It wasn't much, but it felt like a luxury. For the first time in ages, she allowed herself to feel worthy of something good. After she ate, she stood in front of the mirror, seeing herself in a way she hadn't in years, someone deserving of care, of kindness, of better days. Later that evening, as she walked home from work, Lily saw a man sitting on the sidewalk, his clothes ragged, his eyes downcast. Something about him reminded her of herself, tired, struggling, invisible to the world. Without thinking, she reached into her purse and pulled out the envelope. She handed it to him, saying, "Here, you're worth more than you know." As she walked away, she felt a small weight lift off her chest. She had paid it forward. And, in that moment, she realized that kindness was a circle. What Clint had given her, she had passed on, and it would continue to ripple outwards. Weeks passed, and Lily's life began to change, not because of any grand gestures, but because of the quiet shift in her mindset. Every day she woke up, she remembered Clint's words. Kindness is never wasted. It had become her guiding light, a reminder that the simple act of treating others with dignity could have an impact far beyond what she could see. She found herself becoming more present with her customers, more patient with herself, and more determined to change the narrative of her life. She saved the rest of the money Clint had given her, but it wasn't just about the financial stability. It was about the emotional strength it had sparked in her. She enrolled in a local community college, signing up for night classes, something she had always wanted to do but had never felt she could afford. She found herself applying for jobs with more confidence, no longer accepting the low-wage positions she had once thought were the best she could get. One evening, while walking home after work, Lily ran into the man she had helped months ago, the one she had given the envelope to. He was standing outside a small store, his appearance cleaner than it had been before, his face lit with a smile. "Lily," he called out as she approached, his voice warm with gratitude. "I just wanted to thank you. You helped me more than you know. I got a job a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to say I haven't forgotten." Lily smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I'm just happy you're doing better," she replied. The man nodded, shaking her hand. "We all need someone to remind us that we matter," he said. "And you did that for me." As they parted ways, Lily felt something deep inside her shift once again. The cycle of kindness continued, each act building on the next. Clint's quiet generosity had given her the courage to change, and now, she was passing that same spark of hope to others. It wasn't about money or even grand gestures. It was about seeing someone for who they truly were, offering them kindness when they least expected it. And in that small corner of the world, that kindness was spreading, one person at a time. Please subscribe channel for Clint Eastwood. Respect, thanks.